Akira is not just a sci-fi anime film. It's not just a post-apocalyptic spectacle with cool bikes and psychic explosions. Akira is a warning, a meditation on power, corruption, trauma, and humanity's endless cycle of self-destruction. And what makes it even more unsettling is that this film came out decades ago, yet somehow feels even more relevant than ever. So let me ask you this right away. How does a movie from the late 80s feel like it understands the modern world better than any films today? If you didn't see Akira yet, spoiler warning, now let's get into the movie. At its surface, Akira tells the story of Tetsuo, a young man in a biker gang living in Neo-Tokyo, a city rebuilt after a mysterious psychic explosion wiped out Tokyo years earlier. Tetsuo is small, insecure, and constantly living in the shadow of his friend Kaneda. But after a fateful encounter with a psychic child named Takashi, Tetsuo begins to develop unimaginable powers. And while that setup might sound familiar, like a superhero origin story, Akira is doing something very different. This isn't about empowerment or heroism. This is about what happens when power falls into the hands of someone who never learned how to process pain. Akira is a dense film, and I want to be honest about that up front. This is not a movie you casually throw on while scrolling your phone. It demands your attention. There is a massive amount of information delivered early on through exposition, visual storytelling, and background details. Political unrest, secret government experiments, psychic children, resistance movements, class warfare, it's all happening at once. And yes, it can feel overwhelming, especially in the first hour, but here's the thing. If you give the film your focus, if you lean into the chaos instead of fighting it, Akira pulls you in completely. Did you ever notice how films that ask the most of us tend to give the most back? One of the most striking elements of Akira is its world. Dystopian futures have been done countless times, but Neo-Tokyo feels disturbingly real. Protests fill the streets, corrupt politicians argue while the city burns. The rich live above the suffering while the poor are crushed beneath it. Crime, drugs, violence, and desperation are everywhere. This isn't a fantasy dystopia. It feels like an exaggerated reflection of reality, and that's what makes it so uncomfortable. It feels like an exaggerated reflection of reality, and that's what makes it so uncomfortable. How different is Neo-Tokyo really from the world we live in now? The film is heavily influenced by Japan's experience during World War II, particularly the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That trauma lingers in every frame. The opening explosion mirrors nuclear devastation, and the story constantly circles around the idea of humanity unlocking forces it doesn't understand and absolutely cannot control. Akira isn't subtle about this, and it doesn't need to be. It understands that suffering, both national and personal, leaves scars that don't disappear just because cities are rebuilt. Politically, Akira is ruthless. The film explores corruption at every level of power. We see politicians who care more about maintaining control than protecting people. We see riots manipulated to justify turning the city into a police state. We later learn that the government itself orchestrated acts of terror to tighten its grip on society. And isn't that one of the scariest ideas the film presents, that chaos can be manufactured by those in power? How often do you think that happens in real life? Class division is another central theme. Neo-Tokyo favors the wealthy while abandoning the poor. Even after total destruction, humanity rebuilds the same broken systems. The rich rise, the poor suffer, and history repeats itself. We also see class division in subtler ways. Soldiers versus scientists, logic versus curiosity, discipline versus emotion. The colonel represents cold control while the scientists are driven by obsession and awe. Neither side is innocent, and neither truly understands the consequences of what they're unleashing. Visually, Akira is breathtaking. The hand-drawn animation is still unmatched in many ways. The attention to detail, the lighting, the movement, it's all stunning. There's a grit to the animation that perfectly complements the story's brutality. Yes, some movements can feel stiff if you're nitpicking, but overall the film feels alive. The pain, fear, and desperation on the characters' faces feel as real as any live-action performance. It genuinely makes you wonder, were these emotions studied from actors, or did the animators just understand humanity that deeply? And Akira is graphic, very graphic. It never feels gratuitous. The violence exists to force the audience to confront the ugliness of this world. It exposes suffering rather than romanticizing it. When bodies break, cities crumble, and people scream, it's meant to hurt, because this world hurts. Would Akira have been as powerful if it held back? The first act of the film does an incredible job establishing this world. In the opening minutes alone, we see the original Akira explosion, the rebuilt Neo-Tokyo of 2019, rampant corruption, protests, biker gangs, and political decay. The groundwork is essential. Without it, Tetsuo's transformation wouldn't make sense. The filmmakers knew they needed to immerse us completely before taking us down the rabbit hole of psychic children and godlike power. The inciting incident arrives when Takashi activates Tetsuo's latent abilities. From there, the story escalates rapidly. Tetsuo is taken to the hospital, escapes, and his powers violently awaken during a confrontation with the clown biker gang. This moment marks the end of Act 1, and from here on out, there's no turning back. Did you feel the shift when the film crossed that line? Act 2 deepens everything. We learn more about the Espers, their limitations, and their fear of Tetsuo. We see the colonel stage a coup when the government refuses to act. The tension rises as Tetsuo grows stronger and more unstable. And then comes one of the film's most shocking revelations. Akira isn't a godlike being preserved in one piece. He has been dismantled, reduced to organs, fragments, kept alive only for study. It's a chilling reminder that even the most incomprehensible power can be stripped down, dissected, and exploited. This moment completely reframes the story and forces a terrifying realization. Akira was never controlled, only taken apart after the damage was done. So the question isn't whether Tetsuo can be stopped, it's why humanity keeps pretending power was ever meant to be controlled at all. The climax is unforgettable. The battle between Tetsuo, Kaneda, and the military is visually stunning. And when Tetsuo begins to mutate into a grotesque, consuming mass, it's horrifying but deeply symbolic. His body reflects his mind. Unchecked emotion, endless hunger, power without understanding. He becomes everything the film has been warning us about. The Esper's sacrifice to stop Tetsuo is tense, tragic, and awe-inspiring. The final moments with Akira's return and the birth of a new universe leave us with more questions than answers. And maybe that's the point. Is this ending hopeful or just another reset in humanity's endless loop? One of the most fascinating aspects of Akira is its refusal to define a clear protagonist and antagonist. Is Tetsuo the hero, the villain? Is Kaneda, the colonel, Akira itself? I believe the true antagonist is the world. Tetsuo is a product of neglect, abandonment, bullying, and systemic failure. He never learned how to process emotion. He was always rescued, never empowered. So when he finally gains godlike power, he reacts the only way he knows how, emotionally, destructively, blindly. Tetsuo represents humanity. We possess incredible power, yet so often choose to act on fear, anger, and impulse. The film compares him to an amoeba with immense power, and isn't that painfully accurate? We can build, we can heal, but we also start wars, destroy cities, and repeat the same mistakes. How many times do we have to destroy ourselves before we learn? Even Tetsuo's design tells this story. He starts as a blank slate, white shirt, grey pants, innocent, forgotten. But as his rage grows, he wraps himself in a red cape, a symbol of blood, anger, and consumption. He becomes the monster the world shaped him into. Akira remains powerful because it understands something timeless. Humanity is cyclical. Destruction, rebuilding, destruction again, the first explosion, the second explosion, World War I, World War II, and beyond. So I'll leave you with this. Do you think humanity is capable of breaking the cycle, or are we doomed to keep repeating it? Just with better technology each time. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.